Sayer and I have this problem where we'll just start talking and then realize like 20 minutes later that probably would have been a good introduction and all that stuff to the show. So I'm going to try to stop doing that. But anyways, Preston Stewart and Sayer Payne with War Stories, joined today by Michael Franks. Michael, thank you, sir, for taking time.
Thank you, guys. This will be fun.
Yeah, so we were just...
or a train wreck.
Something in between is what we'll aim for.
I like it.
We were just starting to talk about kind of where our paths crossed, or I guess didn't really cross. I don't know the right way to put that, but Fort Campbell. When were you there? When were you there?
January 30th, 2007.
You got the date down?
Left June 12th, 2012. So I was there for 2 deployments, Iraq for 15 months and Afghanistan for 12. I was training for my 3rd one when I got the volunteer papers to go be a recruiter in Cincinnati area. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they took me out of my 3rd deployment. I was a little bitter about that, to be honest.
No kidding. That's always such a weird dynamic of, I don't know. There's no easy way to explain that. The mix of wanting to go and not wanting to go at the same time, or.
Yep. 100.
Were you married, kids at the time?
Yeah, I've been married most of my military career. So then we have 3 kids. We had 2 when we got out of active, and then we have a 3rd one now. So.
That's awesome.
And you got to tell the quick story of when you enlisted, because Michael's like an old man. He enlisted as an old man, right?
I did enlist as an old man. So I'll make it quick, but it's my 26th birthday. I'm actually a pseudo pathetic California surfer boy. I wasn't a great surfer, but I enjoyed the beach. But it was my 26th birthday. It was really early in the morning on the day of my birthday, and I was out on the sand dunes overlooking, getting ready to go surf, just kind of taking an assessment. I was making pretty good money and just kind of playing all the time, partying, surfing, snowboarding, lifting, boxing, just kind of living kind of a half-assed existence, even though I was doing a lot of things.
Maybe.
It doesn't sound that bad.
You can be very busy and do nothing productive. Let's just put it that way. Even though it was a lot of fun. You're right. It's a lot of fun. But I was like, oh my goodness, I had such a great year. I made all this money. Went and saw, I think that year I'd seen like David Bowie at the Shriners Auditorium, surfed up and down the California coastline, and snowboarded in Tahoe for like a couple weeks. I mean, it's just a crazy fun year. And it just kind of dawned on me I was going to be a 40-year-old hitting on college student someday. And I went, oh, I don't want to do that. Well, what did I want to do when I was growing up? And that's when I remembered I had wanted to do the service. So I didn't go to sleep, went talk to the recruiter, and shipped just before I had like a bunch of business stuff that had to be taken care of because I was technically, had a business that I was helping run. So I was in a very delayed entry program, but just before my 27th birthday, shipped for good old Fort Benning, Sand Hill, Bravo 258, and went through the OSIT and then into Airborne, other training. So
what kind of
that's
business?
My story.
What kind of business were you running? You were just vague enough on that to where it makes me think there's some cool story there.
It's not that cool. I was just running crews for my father and his partner's business. We built they used to custom timber framed homes. So cool. Exposed timber, high end. We worked on like $16 million houses. It was a lot. And I was kind of key at one point for a lot of the running a lot of the work. And so it wasn't just me being able to step back and leave. There was a lot of other things that you need to take care of.
So then what year was this? When you were 26, when you had the realization?
It was 2005, February 11th, 2005.
You've got these dates down, man. I can't remember. Yeah, that's impressive.
Well, it's because I'm a narcissist, but we'll move. It's about
what
me.
day? So you said November what? When's your birthday?
February 11th.
Oh, February 11th. Okay. I was I thought it was coming up. I got you.
No, I know you're going to get me.
Was Campbell your first duty station then?
Yeah. Oh, so this is where it gets kind of gray.
That's like a 2-year gap. Yeah.
I was actually an 18 X-ray. So I was an Air Force special operations baby. And during the process, I got injured in my first time in selection. They were recycling me through SOPSI, special operations preparedness course. And then I fell 30 feet and basically finished off my right ankle. And so they kicked me out to 101st. So I was actually in the Army for just over a year before I actually got to my first official duty station, because I was in so much training. So I went through OSIT, Airborne, through SOPC, went to selection, got dropped on 13th day of selection for injuries. There's infections through my feet. I couldn't walk anymore. It's kind of gruesome, actually. Went back to SOPC and then hurt myself in SOPC again. And they said, hey, you're going to go be an infantryman. I'm like, it's kind of bummed. I was enjoying the pseudo special operations life a little bit.
So for anybody listening, people probably understand what airborne school is. OSIT is a mix of basic and kind of advanced infantry training for infantrymen down at Fort Benning. But can you talk through that special forces program? Because I don't know if they're still doing that, but that was unique.
I don't know either. Yeah, I think they had actually been doing it. They had started, if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong, and somebody will probably say that's not right. But
yeah,
if I remember correctly, they had started that program like because of the low numbers for the special operations community. They had actually started kind of figuring that program out before 9/11, 2001. And then when, actual battle rhythms started happening and African cycles, deployment cycles started happening, and they needed to pump up the numbers for special operations. They started the 18 X-ray program, which is kind of a non-traditional route for high performers to go through OSIT, Airborne, then get trained to go to selection for special operations selection, or special forces selection. If they get selected, then they go through the actual what's the course called? Q course. Can't believe I can remember that. And if they make it all the way through there, they get their long tab, their beret, and go get on a team for a few years. So
it's an interesting dynamic because special forces is kind of viewed, or just based off their mission set, more mature. Going to be a little bit older. Those teams are all NCOs and officers. There's not privates and specialists running around on the team. So I feel like the traditional move is people go out into the force for 3, 4, 5, 7 years and then try out. So yeah, it's an interesting model. I feel like I've heard people say good and bad things about it, which, probably.
I heard 50-50. I heard, what I pretty much heard was that it was 50-50. You get really good guys that were just like high performers, ready to suffer or ready to do the work. And you get guys that would just get their tab and then slough off. That was the goal wasn't, I think, from what I can tell, their goal wasn't to perform as a special operations, special forces soldier. Their goal was just to get the tab or the beret. Yeah. And, that's the wrong, that's not the right mindset. And, that's a limiting mindset. At least that's my perspective, is that's a limiting mindset if you're going to go on and perform. So
now I would think though, at that beginning era, because I think you're right. I don't know when it started, but early 2000s, maybe late 90s even. But when I was like a cadet at Robin Sage in 05, actually. So probably the same time frame, which is really fun. But I was really impressed with pretty much everybody, by the way. Like, because the students, there were a handful of them that were 18 X-ray, but like they were all badass in their own ways, whatever they were doing prior. And then you had the guys that came up enlisted for several years, and they were all sort of badass and had their badges and tabs already going into Q course and whatever. Like I remember one of the guys was one of the medics. He was like a college grad electrical engineer from University of Florida, or Miami, not Florida. Either way, and then kind of similar to your story, really, very similar. Just a mid to late 20s guy that call for service and probably adventure. I mean, that's going to be a component with those programs. But anyway, my point is, I would think that early into it, which is your time frame, the cadre and the people who were grading you guys and selecting you guys didn't come up in 18 X-ray. And so they're going to be protectors of the tab. In a way, I think it would be stronger graded, let's say, at that beginning, because those guys that came up that were cadre, at least the ones I was around, I mean, they came up in like the 80s and the 90s, which I think there's a really high caliber of soldiery, if that's a word, in that era, especially when you're SF to like earn your way. through that system and the things that they were doing, because there really wasn't quote action back then, but we know that they were down in South America and they were doing stuff and they were involved, right? In geopolitics, global war on terror even was happening in the 80s and 90s. And those were the kind of guys doing it back then.
Yeah, man, and I agree with you in many ways. When I went through, who knows, because my perspective is very limited. Some quality guys, they expected the best of you. And they were pretty good at getting rid of, professionally getting rid of the chaff before they, during the process. They wouldn't pick on people. They didn't but they made the process difficult before you even got to selection. But you're right. I think there was, because they all had been on teams. They knew what was coming up. They got their buddies still out there. Some of them are recovering from wounds, from being wounded in action. Some of them, this is the only break they get so they can finish their degree to get onto OCS. I'm mentioning somebody specific. I don't know where he is now. Or they're working on warrant officer packets, but they also knew that they had left their buddies back at the line and they didn't want to be sending trash to their buddies. So, again, that 50-50 was like the overall program. And this was more when I was talking to other people about it back probably early 2010, 11 timeframe. So, but I'm with you on that. They had a better, I just think people are tougher. I think there's some truth to you're the worst, that whole you're the worst class we've ever had. I think there's some truth to that because things have become easy. Every military class you go to, you're the worst class we've ever had. There might be a little truth to that, even though it's tongue in cheek too, is because we are drawn from society. In many ways, society's expectations and standards have eased. Let's just put it that way over the years. So, yeah, I don't know if I went on the right rabbit trail or not, but that's
well. I don't want to bounce around too much, but we do have a connection with Justin Roberts, right? He was in your unit.
Yeah, he's my boy.
And so I'm interested in that because the documentary, I guess that's where I would put it, right? Documentary Hornet's Nest. That's one of the only. Love. And No Greater Love. Yeah. Oh, that's right.
That's his. That's his.
That's right.
So you got to see that one. Yeah.
I don't know why I jumped to Hornet's Nest. Yeah.
No, they're both good.
So those are both ones that I've shown family and friends when they've asked what Afghanistan's like. I thought it did a really good job. There's a couple others in there, right? Korangal, Restrepo, I think. But I mean, you're going to have a hard time coming up with 10 movies that I think are of that caliber from these current conflicts. What was that like, man? Being on, did you guys know that you were going to be a part of these documentaries? What was that? Yeah,
we knew Mike and was it Carlos was his son? We're running around.
That was Hornet's Nest, right?
Yeah, it's Hornet's Nest. Yeah, we're running around documenting, and of course, Justin is a very talented photographer and videographer. I mean, the guy's got I take a picture and it might as well be me drawing stick figures of what happened. And he was running around with camera and catching people. Some of the best pictures I have of myself are his pictures I have floating around somewhere. So you knew something was, but you weren't really focused on, or at least I wasn't very focused on it. We had a set, I don't know if you guys remember Jim Foley. Do you remember the guy, the independent? I don't think, was he a first? No, he was the independent war correspondent that was beheaded by the Taliban, was ISIS, about in 2014, I think, or 2012, 2013 timeframe.
I was thinking of the guy that, no, go ahead, not important.
Oh, you're good. No, I'm saying he was embedded with us also, and you just don't really think, I wasn't really thinking, our story's coming out. It was just like, these guys are writing stories and whatnot. And so, it was kind of interesting to come back and go, it's all documented. And I was right there. Or I'm 3 miles from there over this hill. And it's kind of fun to see. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, no, it is. Because I feel like at the time, anytime we had a reporter or a journalist, and Sayer probably had more interactions than I did, it was a very nerve-wracking, and they weren't internal. It wasn't like Justin, where he was the chaplain, where there was some trust there. It was some random dude from who knows where. And there was a level of we got in trouble before. One of my soldiers went up to the roof to fix a Mark 19, and he didn't have his blouse on because it's 120 degrees in July in Afghanistan. And a reporter on the ground snapped a picture, but he still had his helmet, iPro gloves, IBA, like he had everything on, just short sleeves, or maybe he had his sleeves rolled up or something small. And that picture, you know, AP, front of the New York Times kind of thing, and it's clear as day, Chad Williams. like you cannot miss. Do you remember that, Sayer? Like you could not miss who this is. And we got blown up for, or not blown, that's a bad term to use in the middle of a war. The battalion commander like came down on everybody hard. So we were all like super skeptical about these reporters, but I'm envious of the fact that you've got these, and so many of you guys have like a documented story from that experience. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And yeah, I do tell people all the time, hey, you need to watch these 2 movies. So
are you actually in them? Like, can you find yourself in the movie?
No, you won't see me. I was on recruiting duty when Justin was doing the interviews for No Greater Love.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked for the leave to go and they wouldn't let me go. It was kind of weird. Yeah, I was a little bummed about that because but at the same time, the guys, like I was just a good soldier. I was a guy that did his job well and was trustworthy and you could just give me something to do. I worked with some pretty hard A motherfreakers that did some incredible things. So, I really feel like I was just in support of some amazing people rather than some sort of main character during this entire thing. So.
Well, it was a hairy time with those, like the Hornet's Nest scenario with those guys. I know you weren't in direct involvement with them, but you knew that they were filming you guys throughout that whole sort of ordeal.
Mm-hmm.
Did you view those guys as did you view them as adversaries or allies? Kind of basically what
the reporters?
Yeah.
I don't know if allies is the right word, but not adversaries. They were just there, and we wanted them alive. We wanted to keep them alive. You were just so. It was rough. I don't know. I'm not going to speak to other people, but I didn't after we lost our first. I mean, you and I've talked about this. After we had a big loss right at the beginning of the war, it was kind of a mentality of, oh, okay, it's another day of this, and maybe we'll make it through. Maybe we won't. Let's fight really hard, and then survived that day and survived the next day. Those kind of peripheral things just seemed. It's not meaningless, but like nothing to focus on. You had so many other things to focus on. Does that make sense? Like they were just kind of there. For me.
That's why I kind of viewed them as an adversary. They were a liability. They were another people that we had to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And they provided no positive benefit to us, at least. I mean, if we thought that maybe the positive benefit were to like tell the story for Americans back home so they can see what it's like on the front lines. Yeah, I get that. But to your point, you're worried about the thing right in front of you. Yeah. And then, we happened to be I think part of it was our battalion just really they just assumed we were doing bad. Like we're doing the wrong thing. That was just with like uniforms or tactics or they just really had that parenting style of the assumption that you were fucked up. And just kind of looked down on all that. So anyway, so then of course, any photo as minor as we might think not wearing the top was, that's what sort of is the story or whatever, when probably us on the line, when you're wearing the protection itself, like the, not necessarily uniformity aspect, but when you've got the eye pro on and the helmet and the gear and the body armor where it's got the plates in it or whatever, shouldn't be an issue, right? Because you're on the front lines and you're the one dealing with the crap. But it's just interesting to hear sort of your experience. But we never had someone in bed for a long time either, though, right? They sort of came and went and that sort of thing.
They came in, took their snaps, and
then you have no idea. You have no idea what you said in the heat of things that they wrote down.
Foley, I actually ended up talking to him for a while, and that guy was just about like the true perspective of what was going on, rather than he had no agenda. Man, that guy was awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoyed talking to him immensely. Sad he's passed, and sad, he was doing what he loved when he was murdered. But I actually really, in fact, there's a couple, I should send them to you. There's some shots in one of the articles he wrote. One of my really good friends, Bill Blessing, we got ambushed on a route. He was there. He was running around taking pictures and helping wounded people. And he took some amazing shots, and we had several wounded in action, a couple of guys that were lifted out. We never, we didn't see until after we got back. But I actually liked him a lot. I thought now we've kind of unraveled what you're asking. I would actually say he was more of an asset just from the get-go myself. And of course, the other of my buddies might say, nah, he was he was just a liability, bro. But I mean, he wasn't underfoot for us and doing his job, but also it was just a pleasure to talk to him and kind of hear his own experiences and so forth. So I didn't talk to Mike and Carlos a ton, a little bit, but not like extended. So from the Hornets guys.
During that time, when you're talking about when you showed up or whatever, because I forget, right? What month was that? Did you guys roll out immediately to the wire? Like what was that feeling like? Like it's called the documentary is called The Hornet's Nest. I guess my question is, did you guys know it was Hornet's Nest before you got there even? And the situation and what was going on and what you're expected to do and everything like that? Because you guys haven't been to Afghanistan before either, right?
No, well, at least our group hadn't. I can't remember the detail. I don't think NOSAC had been to Afghanistan yet. Our battalion, 2nd to 327th Infantry, NOSAC battalion. I gotta flex on you, you strike people.
You got to.
Good luck.
Who are you with, Preston?
Same strike. Sayer and I were in the same company. Yeah.
He was a
company
okay,
FSO. Yeah, that's right. Oh, okay, right on. All right, cool. So just I'll try to make it a quick story. Hadn't seen our battalion commander, who's now Major General Val, but he was Lieutenant Colonel Val.
Oh, really?
At the time. Yeah. I hadn't seen our battalion commander in a while, and we're getting closer to the step off date, and I see him and I approach him, and my wife was the FRG leader, so I'm not saying I had a more friendly, but I approached him probably more than an E5 at the time should have. Looking back, and hey, sir, it's good to see you. He said, hey, Franks, and I said, where have you been, sir? I haven't seen you around much. He told me that he was, over there with the unit we're going to rip with and seeing what's going on. I'm like, oh, cool. What's it like? He said, this is going to be a real war, Franks. Like, this is going to be a real war. And that, I've been to Iraq, and it was 15 months. It was long. It was hot. There had been some pretty heated moments. Lost my best friend. Lost a lot of good friends in Iraq. But it wasn't a constant. What Afghanistan turned into be. I think that. We didn't know. And then when it hit, and the realization hit of like, holy cow, we are surrounded by enemy who are up higher than us most of the time. And we are limited in our mobility and our maneuver, being able to maneuver, and they can just set up. It got real. Like it got real really quickly. And I've heard people tell us it was the Vietnam of Afghanistan, like our deployment was. So yeah, you had an idea that we are going into a real war, but until you really stepped into it, none of that computes. None of that computes, at least not for me. I mean, maybe other guys that have been in Afghanistan and had seen some of the other stuff, they'd be like, yeah, this is about right. But for me, it was definitely I thought this was only in the movies kind of moment,
And that's interesting if you were already sort of in the shit in Iraq too with combat experience, right? I mean, was that a CIB experience? Because our battalion, the Iraq one, really wasn't. Not the third deployment, right? The first two, yes, but the third, not so much.
Yeah, we had in Iraq, just quickly, I mean, we had a giant push in the Al Sadin Desert to push out Al Qaeda. And so, like, we basically had a company level operation where my best friend David Hart and two other guys were killed in a linear ambush in some reeds, and it was just a big giant gunfight and follow-on operations for weeks and months on end, and and then there's little skirmishes here and there and IEDs, but it was a pretty rough day for a lot of guys in Iraq. So
with the benefit of hindsight now, it's been 10 plus years since you left that deployment in Afghanistan. Is there anything that comes to mind that like you would have done differently or you think should have been done differently from your little, unique perspective? I say little, I mean that you weren't overseeing.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I can only see this.
Yeah.
And what I read and so forth. I mean, hindsight being 2020, the military, in my opinion, can be used as the military and not a humanitarian mission. I think it was from a movie. I can't remember what movie it is. This guy talks about the army, the military is not a scalpel, it's a broadsword, and I'm not a huge fan of counterinsurgency anymore, and this mindset of it. I could be completely wrong. However, I do believe the military needs to maintain and focus on lethality and not so much the minds and hearts thing, and cut off the head of the snake, leave the snake there, and let them do their thing. Again, hindsight being 2020, it's just, and I don't see all the moving pieces and so forth. I just feel like we've wasted a lot for nothing, and it seems to be the continual story lately. Is we're sacrificing men and women and a lot of money and a lot of efforts and a lot of stuff for nothing in the end for the American people, if we're being honest. And you can point, some people say, well, it's better we keep the fight over there. I'm like, well, really? I mean, how can you quantify that? You don't know that.
And that's a tough argument with the Taliban, who don't strike outside of Afghanistan. Yeah.
Very much
exactly. So. And it's a tough argument even now, because now we've picked up left, last year in a way that empowered the enemy, in my opinion. Again, I could be wrong. And so if they want to reach out and strike out again, or be, enablers for somebody else that wants to set up terrorist cells, we're pretty much where we were before. It feels like it.
I've got to work on my analogy here. This is going to be a work in progress, but I very similar point of view where, like, I feel like we're playing a different game than they were. It's like we're out there playing football and we're pointing to the scoreboard and we're briefing that scoreboard back to the American public. Like, look, we're winning at halftime. We have more points. We have more yards. We have fewer injured players, whatever it might be. But the other team is playing a game that we've never heard of.
Yep.
So they don't care what that scoreboard says. They don't care that we have whatever rules we're playing by. They don't care. So we're winning the game that we created, but the other team isn't playing that same game. How does that shake out?
100. I think that's actually probably one of the better analogies for this is right there. And again, hindsight's 2020. I was full in, in 2010, 2011. We're going to create this counterinsurgency atmosphere. We're going to create security for the people, and then start building out their infrastructure and opening schools and so forth and so on. But there's no buy-in. And again, I hope I'm not being insulting with this for anybody, but there's no, you can want the greatest thing ever for somebody that may be an addict to something, but until they want to buy in to fix the problem, you're not going to get anywhere with it whatsoever. They have a different culture, so it's hard to say problem, because they have a different culture, different perspective, different values. And we're like, no, you want our values and you want this and that and other things. And they're like, why? We don't value those things the same way. So there wasn't enough buy-in. I think in a micro levels, there was enough buy-in there wasn't enough buy-in that coin was going to work there in the first place. I think we held on a little too long for that, with that reason. So.
We also have hindsight, yes, of 10 years, but it'll be interesting 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, because what are the long-term consequences of our 20-year involvement there? With lots of death and destruction, yes, but also lots of sort of economic things, cultural things, hard drives being shared, languages being shared, religions being shared, cross-cultural collaborations that haven't really occurred for 5,000 years really in that country.
That's fair.
While the Soviets were there, they just beat the crap out of them. They didn't try to integrate whatsoever. And, Afghanistan in the Soviet era was the same with ours, except for cell phones. And then the Soviets in the 80s at post-World War II was pretty much the same, except for motorcycles. And then World War II and prior to was the time of Jesus, was how that place is. It's like Palestine. Bethlehem would have looked, really. It's almost like that now, except for the cell phones and motorcycles. And
and a couple of hydroelectrical dams, I think, if I remember correctly.
It's arrogant for one to think that we can just change it on a flip of a switch, I think. from expectation wise. But I do think we've made an impact, even though as negative as it's all gone, right? No, I don't know if anybody's pointing to it. I'm not saying it's successful. I don't think anyone's saying that necessarily, but I am going to wonder what it looks like 50 years from now, because again, I wouldn't want to be anybody living in Afghanistan. We're all sort of actively trying to get people out of that country still.
Absolutely.
But I think that women are, that's my question. I don't know the answer. Are women better situated now than they were 20 years ago? And people in general, even with the Taliban in control, if we weren't there, would women be in a better position or worse position or neutral?
I mean, we don't know, because a lot of that might have played out on its own too, as the world got smaller and smaller. We don't know. We can speculate. And this is why I get very hesitant about, armchair quarterbacking, or, if we had done this, maybe it would have been better this way. And that's why I even hesitate to even said, I wish we weren't doing like what you're saying, counterinsurgency. I do believe that if we're going to do a counterinsurgency type of program in the future, I don't think the military should be involved with that. I don't know, except maybe on the security side, but the rest of it needs to be left alone. The military is supposed to maintain lethality. We break things and kill people. That's our job. Whether we like it or not, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of having to kill somebody, but I understand the necessity in a wartime scenario. But that's a great point though. I think on the individual side, there's probably a lot of, and we probably know several great stories of interpreters that are over here with their families, and I do personally, pursuing medical degrees, and their families over here, and their kids are going to be able to grow up with freedom. And so on the individual level, yes, but what, the return on investment, the tangible return on investment, and then what's the intangible return on investment? Like is it worth this for this? And on the individual level, absolutely. But on the macro level, that's a rough one. But
the Taliban now are having to figure this out on their own, because it's not like, I agree that conventional military against an insurgency is a challenge, and like I don't think we figured that out. I don't think we had the answer and didn't do it. I don't think we figured it out. But now the Taliban are getting a dose of that, in a sense. There's something called I think it's the National Resistance Front. It's the New Age Northern Alliance up in kind of the northern part of the country.
Yeah, I looked.
And as well as ISIS-K in the eastern part of the country are essentially waging forms of insurgency against the Taliban. Cool. And sure enough, the Taliban are having a hard time really putting those down. It's like weird. It's like that kind of warfare in that part of the world, especially, is challenging.
Yep, absolutely. Well, you've seen it, the terrain alone, and then the different tribes and the sub-tribes and the families and the blood feuds, and those things have been around for thousands of years. So I would not want to try to rule Afghanistan.
When you left Afghanistan, did you think that it was going to be successful? Or like, what was your feeling on the, again, 10 years ago, but
with how much work we put in, and we put in a lot of work in our area. I mean, I'm going to be careful here because I can be pretty prideful. They knew not to mess with Alpha Company, 2nd of the 327th. We were the Birdmen of Asmar, was our nickname there.
That's a cool nickname.
That is a great nickname, I'm not going to lie. We were catching their talk, their radio chatter, when we were ripping with another unit, or with the next unit, which was the who ripped with us? Was it the 25th? No, it was the 173rd, Italy, right? Yeah, Italy, 173rd. Yeah, we were ripping with those guys, and we were on right seat right or left seat, whichever it is. We were going out with them, and there's a tick, troops in contact, and everybody dismounts to do their thing, and over the signals, they was like, stop firing. Those are the Birdmen of Asmar. They're going to kill you. And so like all the firing it went silent in like minutes. And our commander got a call. Hey, we're sorry. We thought you had left already. We'll wait until you're gone. Please don't hurt us. This is like strange, weird war. And that actually happened when we went to support Bravo Company. There was a big tick, and with Bravo Company in their area. I forget where they were right now off the top of my head. Our guys popped out, and apparently the Taliban in the area recognized the commander and recognized a couple of the other people that were there, our commander, and a couple other people like, oh, wait, those are the Asmar guys. And they stopped the fires right then too, because they were like terrified we were going to murder them. So it was kind of a funny thing. Sorry, I forgot what we were talking about.
Well, I was going to say so your guys were lethal, your guys were effective, but when you got home, did you have in your mind that like Afghanistan was going to work?
I did not think so at the time. I just didn't know. My thought was that it would become like, it would probably fragment into 2 or 3 different countries at some point. And again, obviously that's not what happened exactly. It sort of is, but I didn't, just because I knew that we were starting to pull out, we were starting to trying to hand over more and more to the Afghani National Army and other security forces. And they weren't ready. They weren't going to be ready for at least a generation, because there wasn't that. They don't have that core. They don't have that core. We were talking about this earlier about those 80s and 90s special operations guys that have all this experience and all this knowledge and so forth, and trying to pass that on and trying to protect the quality. They didn't have that core of generations of the Afghani National Army, this kind of pseudo Republican, Republic army, to build on. It was going to be at least another generation, and we're a democratic republic, and so the boss changes every 2 to 4 years, and we don't have the attention span nor the stomach for what it's going to take to make a complete cultural shift over 3,000-4,000 that's been around for 2,000 years. I mean, I don't think we're not the guy. We're not that guy. I don't know who that guy is. So
I expected you to say that you didn't think they'd be ready. I feel like this is like becoming an unofficial project of mine to ask anybody who's in Afghanistan if they ever thought that it would work, because I felt that same way as you did when we left in 2011. I went back a year later in 2012 and had even lower confidence that they were going to make it work. But we were still in the country for another 9 years. Like I'm having a hard time coming to grips with that. I can't think of anybody I've interacted with who spent time in Afghanistan who says, yes, they were ready to go. They were all set. Everybody says they weren't there. They weren't ready. It wasn't going to work. And like, how is that not, not intentionally going to try to keep this from getting political, but like, how did that feedback not ever, where did that feedback change, right? If everybody on the ground says it's not working, how on earth does it get to the top that we're on track, this is working? It's a totally different message.
Yeah.
That's not a direct question. I'm sorry. I'm just ranting.
No, I'll answer. There's geopolitical minefields, economies that have at least some basis in wartime production of goods and services.
Bingo.
It's so clear cut to us. Like, it's not so clear cut to make a decision at a higher level of what that means, especially everybody's self-interested. So shame on people if they kept us there purely for self-interest and means, but I don't know if they're still doing it. There's like something like 3,000 or 4,000 M1 Abrams tanks that are just rotting. And wherever the M1 Abrams tank is being made, they're still producing a certain number. And that's because they don't want the jobs to produce the M1 Abrams tank to go away. I don't know if they're still doing that. This was like a couple of years ago, last time I checked.
You mean like we have too many that we can't maintain them and they're still producing?
We don't have enough 19 kilos to man the damn things. They have more than they need by like 4,000 or something, or 2,000. I might be blowing those up to like make a point here.
More tanks than tank crewmen.
Yeah, exactly. And they're still making, or they were. They might have changed. So again, there's so many facets to it, and we can like point to wartime. The war machine there and the economic war machine there and go, oh, that's just foul and bad. But at the same time, you can also go, well, that's also hundreds and thousands, if not millions of jobs that are producing for families here. I mean, it's just, we're all, even though these have become the wars where nobody felt connected, we all are connected and still to this day. We just may not objectively or like philosophically be connecting, but we're all in this boat together. And I feel like we just need to learn to mind our own business more, first and foremost, and not get into these for at least a long time and fix ourselves quite a bit.
It's like tie your own shoes first before you start correcting someone else's gait or whatever the hell's wrong with them. It's real easy to point, hey, tuck your shirt in, man. And you yourself have spinach in your teeth or whatever.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, that's the human nature, isn't it though? We forget, we expect our leaders to we expect our leaders to be George Washington, and even him had his flaws, he had several flaws too. And the fact of the matter is you have flawed people that are still making mistakes and still have self-interest and have moments of weakness, have moments of incredible strength and ingenuity. And in the end, we all end up kind of being the bad guy in our own story and the story of others. So it's a lot more involved in trying to point out stuff like I said, the geopolitical, or all this other, or the military economic war machine. What is that called again? It's not that.
Military
industrial war complex.
There it is.
Industrial war complex. Jeez, I know I was saying something wrong. Yeah.
Eisenhower, baby.
Yeah, Eisenhower. And he's right, 100% right. But it's also integrated. And we also have the best toys. Well, sort of. We're starting to get caught up a little bit, but we still also have the best toys. So there's that as well. So yeah, I don't know. There is no perfect answer. There's going to be pros and cons either way. Short answer with Afghanistan is no buy-in. Needed at least one generation of military teaching, training experience to then build off of, to actually have some sort of security where they could fight off the Taliban. That's a very long back to the center.
Well, I would synthesize what I'm hearing is then ultimately thesis-wise here. We've got hearts and minds, counterinsurgency as a concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's a decision tree, right? Is this what we're going for? Is this the goal? If that answer is yes, then we say no to the military, which means we're not going to kill our way through that problem, right? We're going to solve it through means of, other means besides violence, right? Trade, communications, education. I'm saying military's use of force. I'm just summarizing military. The whole job, like you said, is to break stuff and kill people, right? That is the point of it. So if you're not, so that's what you should expect if you use them, right?
Yep, exactly.
So we're not going to apply that. So we got to apply something else. So maybe we don't even need to go to down that rabbit hole yet, because that's a complicated question itself.
It's more and more complicated, yeah.
And then when you're saying, on top of that, then in this sort of, we're setting expectations, right, to meet a definition of success. We're not going to use the violent means because our objective is hearts and minds. And then you're already talking about what the people currently believe, what the beliefs that we want them to believe that they don't, and how it's generational, which means it's just a very long time. And I think that might have been part of the issue with 12-month deployments. We all know you're punching a time card every day.
Yep.
We know it. That whole, I do think from Vietnam, we learned not to take those arbitrary hills as much and do the body counts as much. That's still a part of the job in a way, but we didn't do it near to that degree they did in Vietnam. So I think that's a win, but something that we repeated again was that was a 10-year war fought 1 year at a time, and ours was a 20-year war fought 1 year at a time. We still sort of did that again, but I wonder if and this is probably indicative of our country as a whole, is just thinking about like, what does 20 years in 2001, what did 20 years from then look like? What does 50 years from now look like with all the things that's going on in the world? Like, who's thinking about one or two sort of generations ahead, and then sort of back planning with the acknowledgement of it takes time to do all these things. And you can't, no amount of GDP and money and bombs and destruction can give you more time and patience. And back to the football analogy, the whole game that people are playing, that's it. Taliban weren't playing the game because they don't have a scorecard or a clock. They're just there no matter what. And people come and go, and they are just extremely patient. And just like they knew your Alpha Company guys, they're also always watching. They're paying attention and they're taking their time. And that that's got nothing to do with tactics or logistics or anything like that. But damn,
Individual
that is
soldiers.
seems to be a winning strategy.
Are you asking a question?
No, that's just a statement.
Okay.
No, I'm
Statement,
just
all right. I was like,
no, I'm just trying to get to the point where, I mean, what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you about the whole use of force, counterinsurgency, all of that. It's just a tough mission for the infantry.
It's a tough mission. It's very fluid, flexible. There's too many moving parts.
There's no objective.
There's the objective has to change because there's new information. Again, this is why I don't fault anybody, to be honest with you, I don't even fault people for do I believe the exit from Afghanistan could have been handled a lot better? Absolutely. But that was going to be a brutal thing no matter what. There was just no graceful exit from Afghanistan. It was either stay there unless it was stay there and provide support for however many long, keep kicking that can down the road. So I'm not even I'm disappointed and I feel betrayed a lot of times, but if I'm logical about it, it could have been held a lot. I believe it could have been handled a lot better. There had to have been a better way than the way they did it. However, they did do it, and it was going to happen at the rate things were going. It would have been nicer if it had been a swan dive instead of a half gainer belly flop on our face embarrassment that it turned into. However, it's hard to just point fingers constantly about, oh, you screwed up this, you screwed up that, you screwed up this, it's just hard to do that. It really is hard to do that. It's just such a complex thing. So
I've got another analogy, sports analogy.
I like it.
Yeah. So to me, that argument about the end of the war, the withdrawal, who messed it up, it's like arguing over a missed field goal at the end of the game that would have tied it. No. The point is that lost the dang game. Stop picking up.
That is a good one.
Shouldn't have been in that place in the first point. Bert shouldn't have been in that place.
Many people put that situation in place, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Where you have to make that goal.
It's not one administration. It's not even one country. We think we would learn from the history of the empires that came before us that this was a rough going, but we're doomed. What is it? Those who don't read history are doomed to repeat it, and we just ignore it. And this is what happens. It's sad. I've lost so many friends. I've lost some of the best people I've known to Afghanistan, and the $10 trillion or whatever that got poured into Afghanistan.
I don't know. It's a number that's too big for me to comprehend.
Yeah, I can't comprehend it either. And we got nothing for it, except for, we do have some individuals that have come from Afghanistan that I believe are amazing, just salt of the earth, good people that want to just raise families in peace and be part of the society. So that's awesome. But
we may have accelerated.
Yeah, again, looking back, I just say again.
We may have accelerated it too. Our 20-year presence may have accelerated it. Who knows?
May have accelerated.
That's possible.
But again, I would say that the risk to reward might be a little great on that one for us. Yeah. What we risk for the reward for the trade-off. Shoot, in the end, and I think we all know this, there might not even be an America in 2030. So it's like you were saying about we can look in the future and all that, and we can project it. I think it always comes back to, we do want a plan and we want like a 5-year plan, but it's 10 year, 15, but really what are we doing today with our families, people around us? How are we improving ourselves? How are we becoming better servants? How are we learning more true humility in our lives so that we can be better assets for those around us? I think those are bigger questions that we need to, as men in this country and women, but men, I'm going to talk to men because we're men here, that we should be focusing more on than now, especially than, the looking back and going, who screwed up what and so forth. It should be really, what are we affecting in the culture around us? The culture, our spheres that we have around us, family, friends, church, if you're a church, schools, sports teams. And we spend our energy doing that and building competent and compassionate people around us and helping build them up for eternal things. I think that's going to be a much better use of our time than spending too much time going, who missed the field goal? Why did we miss that field goal?
Use my analogy.
Yeah, I loved it. It was perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Because if the defense had gotten one more sack, and stopped
all it takes, man. Dang
3
defense, yeah.
3 and 9, the defense had sacked the quarterback or stopped the run. It's just like you're absolutely right. Again, we're all in this together. It's easy, especially if you're on other sides of the political aisle, to just constantly point at each other and scream and yell, rather than go, okay, this is where we're at now. If somebody was negligent or criminal, let's address that. But how do we move forward? How do we do better as a society? And I think military, the people that are coming out of the military, especially now that we've been through the trauma and the experiences, need to start coming out on top on this. How do we affect the culture around us, just around us, and build up that culture, and keep our heads in the geopolitical clouds for too much longer. So. That's my soapbox for the day.
I like it, man. I think that's a really good positive note to end it on. Sayer, you got anything before we wrap up here, man?
I believe in, you can only worry about the things you can control. So I agree.
Boom.
But if history is doomed to repeat itself, then we sort of do have to talk about it so we don't do it again.
Oh, agreed. And I think after action reviews are very valuable.
And that's, to me, kind of, at least personally, a pay it forward to not repeat some doomed things that we've all lived through ourselves. But a part of that is what you're saying. I agree, is sharing, or like, you can control your own actions and just trying to be we all went off and did crazy things, and now we all live in small town USA. And so we can offer these perspectives that a lot of people don't have, right? And it's good, bad, or indifferent. We're a little bit different for that, right? And other people have different things to share and bring towards life and community, and different perspectives and attitudes. And I think those are all healthy, and they're only had through conversation. But the final piece that I was thinking was back to the United States, back to us. As a kid of the 90s, I really believed in the motto of be all you can be. And I think our country should think that too, as a nation. Hey, what's be all we can be as the United States, And if that's our mantra, does that mean we should be in Afghanistan at all at this point, or whatever? Like, does that have to do with be all you can be in the regards of United States of America? And then us as individuals, it's like, just be all you can be, right? It doesn't mean be all that you think your dad thinks you should be, or be all that your coach thinks you should be, or your professor or whomever, or even your first sergeant. It's yourself, just best of your abilities, whatever those are. And then just keep walking forward.
Yeah. You got to be honest with yourself that I really leave it all on the field today. Like, if you can honestly say, yeah, I left it all on the field, well, that's amazing, because I don't think I've ever ended a day going, I left it all on the field. For true, except maybe a couple times in the military, obviously. But yeah, I agree with you on that. Like, how do we be all we can be? And I don't want to say it just affect the culture. So, sorry. I think I should have left it on that rather than throwing my 2 cents. That was good.
That was good.
I'm rambling too. It's all stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for taking the time, man. It was fun to chat. Nice to meet you.
This is great.
Yeah, and hope to cross paths as well. Get up there in Cincinnati.
Oh, it'd be great. Yeah, come on up. We'll go to see, where should we take him if he comes on up?
We got a good crew. You'd have fun.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
we'll go shoot guns and then go get tacos.
Yeah. Sounds like a great thing.
Plenty of activities.
Oh yeah, so many activities, so much room for activities.
You're really selling it. All right, guys.
All right, sir.
Talk soon.
Have a good one, guys.